That's right, I pinned it up. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Thanks for joining me here in the reading room. It is Wednesday, December 10th, day 283, and we are reading this really, oh my gosh. I don't know about, it's hot. But we're going to read it. There's no reason not to. I haven't picked another book out. Actually, I do have one picked out. A little bit of an interesting kind of twist for our reading room, but not for the rest of the classroom. That's why I'm kind of hesitating on it, because this is supposed to be not our learning room, but our reading room. But it is the classroom. We're always learning, aren't we? I stopped and made some more warm tea. And this is the apple cinnamon. Hate it. All right. Let me turn off the heater there. And so we don't have the background noise going on like we did during the Bookless classroom. Okay, so we left off, I think, on chapter 8. Actually, on book 8, chapter 10. Nobody will answer his GD question and give him a straight answer because you're all in frickin' La La Land. Sounds like it was written by Timothy Leary. Book 7. Chapter 10. Wisdom Esoteric. That day John spent, as he had spent the other, wandering around aimlessly, and I have to read about every effing nothing going on, and often sleeping in fields. In this valley the year came on with 7-leagued boots. Today the riverside was thick with fritillaries, the kingfisher flew, the dragonflies darted, and when he sat it was in the shade. A pleasing melancholy rested upon him, finally, and a great indolence. He talked that day with many of the people of the house, and when he went that night to his cell, his mind was full of their resigned voices and of their faces, so quiet and yet so alert, as though they waited in hourly expectation of something that would never happen. When next he opened his eyes, moonlight filled his cell, and as he lay waking, heard a low whistle from without his window. He put out his head. A dark figure stood in the shadow of the house. "Come out and play," he said. At the time there came a sound of suppressed laughter from an angle of deeper shadow beyond the speaker. "This window is too high for me to jump from," said John. "You forget that it is by moonlight," said the other, and held up his hands. "Jump," he said. John cast some clothes about him and bounded from the window. To his surprise, he reached the ground with no hurt or shock, and a moment later he found himself progressing over the lawn in a series of great leaps amidst a laughing crowd of the sons and daughters of the house, so that the valley in the moonlight, if any had watched, would have looked like nothing so much as a great salver which had been made into the arena for a troop of performing fleas. Their dance or race led them to a dark border of neighboring wood, and as John tumbled down breathless at the foot of a hawthorn, he heard the surprise all around him, the sounds of silver and glass, of hampers opening and bottles uncorking. My father's ideas of feeding are a little strict," explained his host, "and our younger ones have found it necessary to supplement the household meals a bit." "Here is champagne from Mr. Halfways," said one. "Cold chicken and tongue from Mr. Mammon. What should we do without our friends? Hashish from the south. Nistris sent it up herself." "This claret," said the girl beside him rather shyly, "is from Mother Kirk. I don't think we ought to drink that." And another voice, "That is really going a bit too fast. No further than your caviar from the Theophists and the first girl, and anyway, I need it. It is only this that keeps me alive." "Try some of my brandy," said another voice, "all made by savages, dwarfs. I don't I don't know how you can drink that stuff, Carl. Plain honest food from Claptrap is what you need." So you say, Herbert, reported a new speaker, "but some of us find it rather heavy. For me, a morsel of lamb from the shepherd's country and a little mint sauce, that is really all you need to add to our father's table." "We all know you like Benedicts," said several. "I have finished," announced Carl, "and now for a night with the dwarfs. Anyone come with me?" "Not there," cried another. "I'm going south tonight to the magicians in Puritania." "With me would be much better for you, much better." Chuck it, Emmanuel, said another. "You might as well go to Mother Kirk straight away." "Bernard does," said the girl who had contributed the claret. By this time the party was rapidly decreasing, for most of the young people, after trying in vain to win converts to their several schemes of pleasure, had bounded off alone, plunging from treetop to treetop, and soon even the thin silvery sound of their laughter had died away. Those who were left swarmed around John, soliciting his attention now for this, now for that amusement. Some sat down beyond the shadow of the wood to work out puzzles in the light of the moon. Others settled to serious leapfrog. The more frivolous ran to and fro, chasing the moss, wrestling with the tickling one another, giggling and making giggle, till the wood rang with their shrill squeals of glee. It seemed to go on for a long time, and if there was any more in that dream, John did not remember it when he woke. 11. Mum's the word. At breakfast on the morning, John stole many furtive glances at the sons and daughters of wisdom, but he could see no sign that they were conscious of having met him in such different guise during the night. Indeed, neither then nor at any other time during his stay in the valley did he find evidence that they were aware of his nocturnal holidays, and a few tentative questions assured him that unless they were liars, they all believed themselves to be living exclusively on the spare diet of the house. Emmanuel indeed admitted as a speculative truth that there were such things as dreams, and that he conceivably dreamed himself, but then he had a complex proof, which John never quite grasped, that no one could possibly remember a dream, and though his appearance and constitution were those of a prize fighter, he attributed this all to the excellent quality of the local fruit. Herbert was a lumpish sort of man who never could master any appetite for his meals, but John discovered that Herbert put this down to his liver and had no notion that he had been stuffing himself with claptrappian steak and gravy all night as hard as he could. Another of the family, Bernard by name, was a radiant health. John had seen him drinking Mother Kirk's wine with great relish and refreshment by moonlight, but the waking Bernard maintained that Mother Kirk's wine was merely a bad early attempt at the admirable barley water which his father sometimes brought out on birthdays and great occasions, and to this barley water he said, I owe my health. It has made me what I am. Still less could John discover, by all the traps that he had laid for them, whether the youngest members of the household had any recollection of their nightly leapfrog and other gambols. He was forced at last to conclude that either the whole thing had been a private dream or his own, or else the secret was very well kept. A little irritation which some displayed when he questioned them seemed to favor the second hypothesis. 12. More wisdom. When they were seated in the porch, Wisdom continued his discourse. You have learned that there are these three things: the island, the roads, and the rules, that they are certainly in some way real and that we have not made them, and further, that it does not help us to invent a landlord, nor is it possible that there should really be a castle at one end of the world and an island at the other, for the world is round and we are everywhere at the end of the world, since the end of the sphere is its surface. The world is all end, but we can never pass beyond that end. And yet these things which our imagination impossibly places as a world beyond the world's end are, we have seen in some sense real. You have told me how reason refuted the lies of the giant by asking what was the color of things in dark places. You learned from her that there is no color without seeing, no hardness without touching, no body, to say all, save in the minds of those who perceive it. It follows then that all this choir of heaven and furniture of earth are imaginations, not your imaginations nor mine, for here we have met in the same world, which could not be if the world was shut up within my mind or yours. Without doubt, then, all this show of sky and earth floats within some mighty imagination. If you ask who's again the landlord will not help you. He is man. Make him as great as you will, he still is other than we, and his imagining inaccessible to us, as yours would be to me. Rather, we must say that the world is not in this mind or in that, but in mind itself, in that impersonable principle of consciousness which flows eternally through us, its perishable forms. You see how this explains all the questions that have lain on our knees since we began. We find the reasonable skeleton in the countryside, the guidelines that enable us both to make maps and to use them when we have made, because our country is the offspring of the rational. Consider also the island. All that you know of it comes at last to this, that your first sight of it was yearning or wanting, and that you have never ceased to want that first sight back, as though you wanted a wanting, as though the wanting were the having, and the having a wanting. What is the meaning of this hungry fruition and this emptiness which is best filling? Surely it becomes plain when you have learned that no man says I in an unambiguous sense. I am an old man who must soon go over the brook and be seen no more. I am eternal, mind in which time and place themselves are contained. I am the imaginer. I am one of his imaginations. The island is nothing else than that perfection and immortality which I possess as spirit eternal and vainly crave as mortal soul. Its voices sound at my very ear and are further than the stars. It is under my hand and will never be mine. I have it, and lo, the very having is the losing, because at every moment I, as spirit, am indeed abandoning my rich estate to become that perishing and imperfect creature in whose repeated deaths and births stand my eternity. And I, as man, in every moment still enjoy the perfection I have lost, since still, so far as I am at all, I am spirit, and only by being spirit maintain my short vitality as soul. See how life subsists by death, and each becomes the other, for spirit lives by dying perpetually into such things as we, and we also attain our truest life by dying to our mortal nature and relapsing as far as may be into the impersonality of our source. For this is the final meaning of all moral precepts, and the goodness of temperance and justice and of love itself is that they plunge the red heat of our separate and individual passions back in the ice brook of the spirit. They are to take eternal temper, though not endless duration. What I tell you is the Evangelium Aeternum. This has been known always. Ancients and moderns bear witness to it. The stories of the landlord in our own time are but a picture writing, which show to the people as much of the truth as they can understand. Stewards must have told you, though it seems that you neither heeded nor understood them, the legend of the landlord's son. They say that after the eating of the mountain apple and the earthquake, when things in the country had gone awry, the landlord's son himself became one of the father's tenants and lived among us, for no other purpose than that he should be killed. The stewards themselves do not know clearly the meaning of their story. Hence, if you ask them how the slaying of the son should help us, they are driven to monstrous answers. But to us, the meaning is clear and the story is beautiful. It is a picture of the life of spirit itself. What the son is in the legend, every man is in reality, for the whole world is nothing else than the eternal, thus giving itself to death, that it may live, that we may live. Death is life's mode, and the increase of life is through repeated death. And what of the rules? You have seen that it is idle to make them, the arbitrary commands of a landlord, yet those who do so were not altogether astray, for it is equally an error to think that they are each man's personal choice. Remember what we have said of the island, because I am and am not spirit, therefore I have and have not my desire. The same double nature of the word I explain the rules. I am the lawyer, but I am also the subject. The spirit impose upon the soul, which I became, the laws she must henceforth obey, and every conflict between the rules and our inclinations is but a conflict of the wishes of my mortal and apparent self against those of my real and eternal. I ought, but I do not wish. How meaningless the words are, how close to saying I want and I do not want. But once we have learned to say I and yet not I want, I and yet not I want, the mystery is plain. And now your sick friend is almost whole, and it is nearly noon. Book 8 at Bay. I'm going to read just a couple more pages, and that's it, because this is a long chapter 2. And we'll see about tomorrow. He that hath understanding in himself is best. He that lays up his brother's wisdom in his breast is good. But he that neither knoweth nor will be taught by the instruction of the wise, this man is naught. Hesiod. Persons without education certainly do not want either acuteness or strength of mind in what concerns themselves or in things immediately within their observation, but they have no power of abstraction. They see their objects always near, never in the horizon. Interesting. Hazlitt. Who are these people? I have no freaking idea. Chapter 1, 2 kinds of monists. That afternoon, as John was walking in the water meadow, he saw a man coming toward him who walked blunderingly like one whose legs were not his own. And as the man came nearer, he saw that it was Virtue, with his face very pale. What? Cried John. Are you cured? Can you see? Can you speak? Yes, said Virtue in a weak voice. I suppose I can. And he leaned heavily on a stile and breathed hard. You have walked too far, said John. Are you ill? I am still weak. It is nothing. I shall get my breath in a moment. Sit down by me, said John, and when you have rested, we will go gently back to the house. I'm not going back to the house. Not going back. You are not fit to travel. And where are you going? I'm not fit for anything, apparently, said Virtue, but I must go on. Go on where? You are not still hoping to cross the canyons. Do you not believe what wisdom has told us? I do. That is why I am going on. Sit down at least for a moment, said John, and explain yourself. It is plain enough. It isn't plain at all. Virtue spoke impatiently. Did you not hear what wisdom said about the rules? He asked. Of course I did, said John. Well, then he has given me back the rules. That puzzle is solved. The rules have to be obeyed, as I always thought. I know that now better than I have ever known it before. Well, and didn't you see what all the rest came to? The rules are from this spirit, or whatever he calls it, which is somehow also me, and any disinclination to obey the rules is the other part of me, the mortal part. Does it not follow from that and from everything else he said, that the real disobedience to the rules begins with being in this country at all? This country is simply not the island, not the rules. This is its definition, my mortal self. That is, for all practical purposes, myself can be defined only as part of me. This is against the rules. That is against the rules. Just as the spirit answers to the landlord, so this whole world answers to the black hole. I take it all exactly the other way, said John. Rather, this world corresponds to the landlord's castle. Everything is this spirit's imagination, and therefore everything properly understood is good and happy. That the glory of this world in the end is appearance leaves the world more glorious, yet I quite agree that the rules, the authority of the rules, become stronger than ever, but their content must be, well, easier. Perhaps I should say richer, more concrete. Their content must become harsher if the real good is simply what is not here, and here means simply the place where the good is not. What can the real rule be except to live here as little as possible, to commit ourselves as little as we can to the system of this world? I used to talk of innocent pleasures, fool that I was, as if anything could be innocent for us whose mere existence is a fall, as if all that a man eats or drinks or begets were not propagated curse. Hold on. I have a rhythm, not necessarily an understanding. Boy, there it is snowing. I said I was going to show it if it was snowing. In Michigan. Delish. And, you know, it's such a strange temperature. This is really the temperature where we would get an ice storm. So, Trav, you can bring the milk, please, and the cream. Because it's already freezing up right there. And I do not want to slip and fall. And I don't, you know, I have a lot of other things here in the house. But I'm out of milk. Not quite out of cream. Not quite out of milk. But I'm down to my last cartons of both. Really, Virtue Really, virtue? This is a very strange view. The effect of Mr. Wisdom's lessons on me has been just the opposite. I've been thinking how much of the Puritanian virus there must still be in me to have held me back so long from the blameless generosity of nature's breasts. Is not the meanest thing in its degree a mirror of the one, the lightest or the wildest pleasure as necessary to the perfection of the whole as the most heroic sacrifice? I am assured that in the absolute every flame even of carnal passion burns on. Can even eating even the coarsest food and the barest pittance be justified? The flesh is but a living corruption. There was a great deal to be said for media. After all, I see that savage was wiser than he knew. It is true she had a dark complexion, and yet is not brown, as necessary to the spectrum as any other color. Is not every color equally a corruption of the white radiance? What we call evil, our greatest wickedness, seen in the true setting, is an element in the good. I am the doubter and the doubt. What we call our righteousness is filthy rags. You are a fool, John, and I am going up into the rocks, till I find where the wind is coldest and the ground hardest, and the life of man furthest away. My notice to quit has not yet come, and I must be stained a while longer with the dye of our country. I shall still be part of that dark cloud which offends the white light, but I shall make that part of the cloud which is called me as thin, as nearly not a cloud as I can. Body and mind shall pay for the crime of their existence. If there is any fasting or watching, any mutilation or self-torture more harsh to nature than another, I shall find it out. Are you mad? Said John. I have just become sane, said Virtue. Why are you staring at me thus? I know I am pale, and my pulse beats like a hammer, so much the saner. Disease is better than health, and sees clearer, for it is 1 degree nearer to the spirit, 1 degree less involved in the riot of our animal existence. But it will need stronger pains than this to kill the obscene thirst for life which I drank in with my mother's milk. Why should we leave this pleasant valley? John began, but Virtue cut him short. Who spoke of we? Do you think that I asked or expected you to accompany me? You to sleep on thorns and eat sloes? You don't mean that we are to part, said John. Pah, said Virtue, you could not do the things I intend to do, and if you could, I would have none of you. Friendship, affection, what are these but the sublest chains that tie us to our present country? He would be a fool indeed who mortified the body and left the mind free to be happy, and thus still to affirm, to wallow in her finite will. It is not this pleasure or that, but all that are to be cut off. No knife will cut deep enough to end the cancer, but I'll cut as deep as I can. He rose, still swaying, and continued his way over the meadow northward. He held his hand to his side as though he was in pain. Once or twice he nearly fell. What are you following me for? He shouted to John. Go back. John stopped for a moment, checked by the hatred in his friend's face. Then tentatively he went on again. He thought that Virtue's illness had harmed his brain, and had some indistinct hope that he might find means to humor him and bring him back. Before they had gone many paces, however, Virtue turned again and lifted a stone in his hand. Be off, he said, or I'll throw it. We have nothing to do with one another. You and I, my own body and my own soul, are enemies, and do you think I will spare you? John halted, undetermined, and then ducked, for the other hand had hurt for the other hand had hurled the stone. I saw them go on like this for some way, John following at a distance and stopping and then continuing again, while virtue every now and then stoned him and reviled him. But at last the distance between them was too great either for voice or stone to carry. John led. As they went on, let me just see how long this one is. John led. As they went on, thus John saw that the valley narrowed and the sides of it grew steeper. At the same time, the crevice on his left hand, which separated him from the western forest, became wider and wider, so that what with that and with the narrowing of the valley as a whole, the level piece where they were traveling was constantly diminished. Soon it was no longer the floor of the valley, but only a ledge on its eastern side, and the crevice revealed itself as being not a slot in the floor, but the very floor. John saw that he was in fact walking on a shelf halfway down one side of the canyon. The cliff towered above him. Presently a kind of spur or root of rock came out from the cliff and barred their way, crossing the ledge with the rune of granite. And as virtue began to scramble about the base of this ascent, trying this grip and that to go up, John gained on him and came again within earshot. Before he came to the foot of the crags, however, virtue had begun to climb. John heard this gasping as he struggled from hold to hold. Once he slipped back and left a little trail of blood where the rock skinned his ankle, but he went on again, and soon John saw him stand up, shaking and wiping the sweat out of his eyes, apparently at the top. He looked down and made gestures threateningly and shouted, but he was too far for John to hear his words. Next moment, John leaped aside to save his limbs, for virtue had sent a great boulder rolling down, and as its thunder ceased echoing in the gorge and John looked up again, virtue had gone over the spur out of sight, and he had no more of him. John sat down in the desolate place. The grass here was finer and shorter, such grass as sheep love, which grows in the quiet intervals between the rocks. The windings of the gorge had already shut off the sight of Wisdom's Valley, yet I saw that John had no thought save of going back, that there was indeed a confusion of shame and sorrow and bewilderment in his mind, but he put it all aside and held fast to his fear of the rocks and of meeting virtue, now mad, in some narrow place whence he could not retreat. He thought, I will sit here and rest till I get my wind, and then I will go back. I must live out the rest of my life as best I can. Then suddenly he heard himself hailed from above. A man was descending where virtue had gone up. Hi, shouted the man. Your friend has gone on. Surely you will follow him. He is mad, sir, said John. No madder than you, and no saner, said the man. You will both recover if only you will keep together. I cannot get up the rocks, said John. I will give you a hand, said the man, and he came down till he was within reach of John and held out his hand, and John grew pale as paper, and nausea came upon him. It's now or never, said the man. Then John set his teeth and took the hand that was offered him. He trembled at the very first grip he was made to take, but he could not go back, for they were speedily so high that he dared not attempt to return alone. And what with pushing and pulling, the man got him right up to the top, and there he fell down on his belly in the grass to pant and to groan at the pains in his chest. When he sat up, the man was gone. Okay, so John forgets himself. Chapter 3, and we are in book number 8 of The Pilgrim's Regress. So interesting. I mean, I find it kind of interesting. I find it a little bit like, I don't know. spellbinding in a way that if you keep going down that road, it's, to think about it, it's a rabbit hole of, I don't know. What is it exactly that man has to figure out? I think it's just patience and for God to, get things in better order as he uses his people to do so. And reading between the lines and understanding the chaos doesn't help anybody, that's for sure. That's what I mean by that. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. This is day 283. We are here on December 10th. We are really getting through with 2025, aren't we? So, thanks so much for joining me here in the classroom. And I will see you tomorrow as we conclude our 3 days on. I've got the oven on, and I am going to make some banana nut bread. I love it. It is like one of my favorites, and it's like a breakfast food, and oh my goodness gracious, when you put it in a pan with butter and basically fry it up in butter, oh my gosh, there are a few things that are better. And there's a lot of great ingredients in it as well. All right, so thanks so much for joining me here, and I'm going to get to my banana nut bread. So far the recipe maker is working for me without paying the extra money. I only have a few recipes on there. I've made them and I've really enjoyed them, and so far I don't need to load anything else up. That's my comments on the recipe maker. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom, where from all sides we are making your life and your mind and your body and your spirit healthier. Thanks.